just jump into it. I have not spoiled anything about this dev diary except for its length, and I accidentally saw someone else's thumbnail about it. So I have an idea what their opinion is, but we're going in blind, as usual. All right. Everybody say hi to YouTube. And we'll hop right in. 176, Southeast Asia. Hello and welcome. I'm Trangela, one of the design leads at Studio Black. In this third regional feature diary for All Under Heaven, we'll be covering Southeast Asia with a special focus on the new Mandala and Wanua government. I thought I saw this on the map, and I don't know what a Wanua is. I thought I saw this last week. And new Wanua government types and how we will use them to highlight the unique aspects of the region itself. We will also cover the new Great Project feature, which I've been wanting to bear pilgrimage to SEA. Yes. Soon. I mean, like, so, not to get distracted from the dev diary necessarily, but like, I'm not just sitting here reading the damn thing. You can read it yourself if that's what you want. I think that Southeast Asia is going to be like the most logical place to go on your first pilgrimage with Hastings as. Right? Like, Viking Japan is funny. And I know a lot of people are going to go straight for Japan and skip Southeast Asia, and I think that's a mistake. Just like geographically, like raiding in longboats in this region, it's gonna be really fun. Because you have to do the meme. You have to do the meme conquest, right? As well as how we will deal with tributaries in this expansion. Good. I was curious about that. While tributaries were introducing cons of the steppe, they don't work in quite the same way for these sedentary states. They had kind of hinted at tributaries being a very limited thing you could do as a sedentary ruler. Not hinted at, I mean, they introduced. But there's not a lot of features to it, so I'm curious how they're adapting that. The big problem is bringing the damn longboats. There is a county in... There's a county in Sinai. I think maybe it's called Sinai. That borders both seas. So you just have to conquer that from whoever controls it. And you're Gucci. The scene, Southeast Asia in the Middle Ages. In our timeline, this region was quite different compared to China in the north, absolutely. It's extremely diverse with a wide range of faiths and cultures within it. Actually, this is I don't know a lot about Southeast Asian history, but this is probably like... No, definitely. This is before... I don't think we would have seen the introduction of Islam in this area yet during the game's time frame. Maybe during the later start date? Again, I don't remember exactly when Islam started to arrive in maritime Southeast Asia. So it's probably, you know, that makes it probably even more diverse than in later periods. Let's see. Of course, we have the Philippines and the more major islands and island groups over here, major island groups over here, whose exact name I'm drawing a blank on right now. We have... I wanted to call it Brunei, but that's not the island. Nothing too unified other than down here. And then Pagan and Angkor, Champa. Cool. In 1900s. Oh, okay, so we are starting to see the introduction in within the game's period. I'm getting my my time frames mixed up then. 867 start. I wonder if they're going to try and make that mechanical or see if, or just sort of let it happen naturally. In large part, Southeast Asia is home to a wide range of tribal polities. These are spread over a geographic area that's just as varied, featuring deep river valleys, jungles, and high mountain ranges. I wonder if we're going to get our tribal rework with this DLC. Surely not, right? In such a place, waterways, seas as well as rivers, are what link people to each other. But despite skilled boat builders and sailors, the region presents many challenges in keeping a larger state together. Absolutely. Realms in this region have, up until recently, tended to be much more transitory in nature than China, Europe, or even India. The norm here is a looser network of city-states bound together by personal loyalties to popular and powerful rulers. These then break apart after the death of a personality that brought them together. It's going to be really interesting. As the Majapahit would discover, yes. Or anyone who's played in this region in EU4, frankly. Richest region of the game in EU4. Hardest to hold and conquer. Well, not the hardest, but geographically. In the Dharmic faiths of India, Buddhism and Hinduism, rulers have found the authority and unifying ideology needed to unite larger realms. They are still centered around great leaders, but with Brahmin priests and their allies, they aspire to become living gods, Devarajas. The Devaraja concept is built upon the Indian idea of an ideal ruler, someone who rules with the gods' favor. In Southeast Asia, this morphs into the idea that a popular king is actually a god personified himself. Religious ritual and kingship blend in enormous temple cities where subjects and remote tributaries alike all come together to fund and construct great public works. Sure. Monuments can be both religious and expressions of royal power, as giant statues of dharmic gods carry the face of the very ruler walking among his subjects. The capital temple complex becomes the center of a mandala, with subservient villages, cities, and tributary kings surrounding it. Nevertheless, even the Devaraja's realms have a fleeting element. Smaller states may pay tribute to the god king, but after one dies or a more persuasive one makes themselves known, they can reconsider their alliance. I like this. A more persuasive one makes themselves known, causing... on the periphery of the Mandala realm, loyalties change quickly. This is really interesting. It immediately brings to mind in I forget the name of the mod, but in the Crusader Kings 3 Japanese realm mod, Japanese setting mod, there is an option where you can convince vassals to betray their liege in order to swear fealty to you instead. And it's a major fuck you to rival rulers. It's really interesting. It sucks when it happens to you. But if your vassal hates you and they really like your neighbor, they can just betray you, and it's super interesting. Southeast Asia is, as mentioned, a diverse region. Alongside the states like the ones I've described here, there's also the Viet and the Kingdom of Najau, later Dali, that operate quite differently. We covered these in a previous dev diary, so we'll not talk about these again today, but this introduction would be incomplete without mentioning them. That's right, these are going to have a government type that focuses more like, that feels more like China. Also, hey Viper. Can I just say, by the way, I don't know if this is a new feature they've implemented on the forums, because honestly, I'm not spending a whole lot of time on the forums lately. I like how they've, instead of just saying the developer's name, it's actually linking their forum account now. That's pretty cool. I noticed this while getting ready for stream. Really neat feature. Roger that from Project Caesar discussions. Ah, yeah. I'm glad they do this now. Now hand it over to Distant Azik, who will discuss how we have endeavored to portray the region. They'll detail the mechanics we've developed to represent the mandala realms and the surrounding non-dharmic tribal realms in All Under Heaven. I'm assuming this name is Distant Azik. Greetings, I'm Distant Azik, one of the designers working on All Under Heaven. Today we'll be exploring the god kings and queens of Southeast Asia, Mandala. Historically, these governments rely heavily on religion and faith, revolving around the one mandala ruler who stepped up with the claim to be a divine being. Map of the Kingdom of Angkor in 1066 with its tributaries and vassals. So, just like nomadic tributaries, you have the main state here with its direct vassals occupying this land. However, these lands that are colored differently and outside of the outline are tributaries under them, but not directly tied. Take a look at his character sheet here. Not a particularly exceptional character, if I gotta say. 51 at that. I wonder what this is here. 8 out of 100 with some developer art. It's definitely new regardless. This is where, this is where your truces and alliances would normally be. So they're adding, maybe this is a more concise way of showing diplomacy. I'm also noticing here that the legitimacy goes up to 8 instead of 5. Maybe mandala rulers have a higher cap of legitimacy? Interesting. Also some new developer art down here. This is probably Great Works. Okay. Interesting, interesting, interesting. From a balancing perspective, the design intent with mandalas is to present the player with a new challenge. Okay. As we will discuss below, mandalas start out weaker, especially compared to being constantly powerful feudal or clan government rulers of comparable size. However, if you overcome the initial difficulties, you work over generations to reach unseen heights of power, as long as you take care not to lose your divinity and prepare your heir accordingly. I'm not sure how I feel about the focus on difficulty here. I'm not a Crusader Kings is too easy person, so maybe this just isn't for me. But I don't think different government types should have difficulty levels. That seems weird and a little uncomfortable. If you give mechanical difficulty levels to different parts of the world, I don't know. As mentioned, mandala revolves around faith, and in line with this, piety will be the mandala's main resource. Opening us up for theocracies as well, maybe? I don't know. Building your first mandala capital temple complex uses mainly piety. Designating your divine heir uses piety. Convincing your immediate surroundings that you are indeed a divine being that they should devote their life and kingdom to, well, piety. And piety levels. The reflection from stability EU4 also has this to an extent. True. We have new piety levels. Religious icon, divine, demigod, godlike. Interesting. The mandala government, being so thoroughly intertwined with faith, religion, and divinity, has unique access to 3 additional levels of devotion: divine, demigod, and godlike. Weird. Now, how do you become godlike, you might ask? It's simple. It's divinity proven over generations. But devotion levels don't carry over generations. Up to and including godlike to receive that. Huh. Character is rumored to be truly godlike. Maximum level of devotion +3. So you unlock higher am I understanding that you unlock higher levels of devotion for your heir as you go along? Divine Blood, Bloodline stuff from CK2. Yeah, a little bit. More practically put, thank you. Oh, I just realized what this is down here. This is cool. If your character reaches one of the new levels of devotion, your successor gains a buff that allows them to progress to the next level of devotion, and so on. I was right. Okay. This can continue until you establish a lineage of godlike characters. Oh, and make sure not to die the wrong way in relation to your aspect. Did you ever hear about that Serenity aspect god king who died from a local epidemic? No, I didn't think so. These are pretty. 9 levels of devotion in a grid ranking from sinner to godlike. So for different religious branches, depending on your religious branch, they had to add more icons for the piety icon. The Christian branches, pagan branches, I think this is Dharmic branches, Islam, Jewish branches, Zoroastrian, Taoist, a Taoist. I'm not sure what branches this is. What faiths, which faiths this one is. It's not familiar to me, so maybe perhaps it's new faiths that are being added. Dalek branch, true. Dalek School of Religions. And yes, we do need to showcase some truly decadent art icon renders for this specific feature. They are very nice, regardless. Matter of temples. So what more might a mighty god King Devaraja possibly need in this world, you might ask? Well, how about temples? In All Under Heaven, we're introducing an additional holding type. This I've been concerned about since they mentioned it. And they are confirming that it is a holding type, which I don't think I like. They can convince me otherwise, going on in this dev diary, but I don't like the idea of adding a new holding type that's geographically isolated. Why are we not just using temples? Why don't we just say that mandalas use temples as their main holdings instead of castles or cities? I don't like this. This will be the main holding for mandala rulers and will also be valid as a capital for most other landed governments alongside the castle holding, in order to ensure it maintains viable if the area is conquered by a non-mandala ruler. So why not use a temple? The temple citadel of your capital is the main location for your capital temple complex. A temple with additional defenses and a fierce focus on levels of devotion. And the foundation for any self-respecting god king. These great buildings are built using the new Great Projects feature, which are a collaborative effort between yourself and your subjects. More on them in a future dev diary. Why can't we just have temples and give the mandala government the ability to build a special building on it, which would be the capital temple? The resulting great building, or capital temple complex, supports your realm in expanding your domain limit and vassal limit within your mandala realm, and by increasing your radiance as a god king, your ability to attract tributaries and vassals. Majestic Temple, improving on the original temple building, the capital temple has been extended with additional shrines, furnishings, and decorations. Pretty significant boost of piety, more domain limit, more vassal limit. This is making me think that the vassal limit is going to start extremely small, like prohibitively small. Domain taxes from the same faith. Tributaries like you more. Court grandeur goes up, which is nice. Legend spread and legitimacy gain. Okay. So it's not even giving you more... I don't know. This is not, Need to get up stupid early tomorrow? No worries. Have a good night, and thanks for hanging out. Building breakdown for Capital Temple Complex Great Building, complete with 5 levels. Of course, only a mandala may enjoy the effects of such a building. Should you stop being a mandala, or if the building should come under control of a feudal or tribal heathen, it won't have much use other than possibly as a tourist attraction. On project completed, gives it a temple citadel holding, gains an ornate temple great building. One of the effects of completing the base tier capital temple complex great project. Hey Ian, good to see you. Did you just start off as a new mandala and didn't get the temple citadel memo? Well, no temple citadel, no problem. You can build it. Sure. Thanks for the hydrate. The double hydrate. What is your aspect? Before even starting the construction of a capital temple complex, the mandala ruler needs to pick one of 4 mandala aspects. Loosely based upon the Hindu god aspects, these aspects should heavily impact the way you choose to approach your mandala gameplay. Sure. Oh! Forgot to change. Let me fix that real quick. I I mean, it's not too late to give to Trans Lifeline, but I am not raising money for Trans Lifeline today on today's stream. As awesome as an organization as it is, can I just say, by the way, thank you all for everyone who gave last week. Whether it was through me or through another streamer who was part of the event. I've already forgotten, but I think we raised $22,000 with all of Diverse Hearts over like 6 days, which is ridiculous, which is, I almost said disgusting. It's not disgusting, it's great. And I'm just super hyped to have been part of that. Really, really cool. Thank you all. Since I forgot to turn off my timer and we got notified about it. Okay, creation unlocks bonuses to chaining construction, and gains piety from child rearing. Should primarily pass on through peaceful means. Oh. Thank you, Callista. Yes. So over 22,000. I was right. Was so cool. So happy with that. Serenity unlocks bonuses to befriending, as well as including allies in the request contribution interaction. Should pass on through peaceful means. It's more than I make in a year. Me too, honestly. I think I finally breached that amount. The last couple of years, but not much. Won't make much more than that. I mean, if I make, I really shouldn't be doing this on stream. If I make that in a month. Oh, no. Yeah, no, it's still more than I make a year. Alright, anyway. Destruction unlocks additional CB and bonuses to military power. May also pass on through combat or certain violent deaths. Trickery unlocks additional schemes like Disbelieve Mandala and provided bonuses to certain schemes, like using Coerce Tributary against someone of a higher tier. Ooh, it's that thing I was talking about earlier. May also pass on through being murdered. Interesting. As one may note in the breakdown, as well as mentioned in a previous paragraph, you don't just get to die in any way to have your heir be able to level up to the next level of devotion. A god of destruction may die on the battlefield and have their existence be canonized, but a god of trickery dying from being a drunkard may be not so venerable. This makes sense to me. It sounds frustrating as hell to, like, make sure your character dies right. In addition to having to manage your succession, in addition to playing well as your character, in addition to building power and gaining influence and yada yada yada. I get what they're saying about more difficulty, but I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. Each of the aspects also come with their own set of requirements in order to achieve the next level of the aspect. Interesting. This system, together with your level of devotion and capital temple complex tier, feeds into mandala radiance. Okay. Multiple rulers in Southeast Asia claim to be the next Devaraja, asserting their own divinity. Well, how impressive is your temple complex? Mandala radiance, which indicates your attractiveness and helps you gauge your competition, is unlocked as soon as you have orchestrated the construction of your first tier temple complex. This is kind of a sphere of influence sort of thing. Work in progress map mode for Mandala, denoting who might accept a tributization offer. Oh, okay. Sphere of influence, Diplo range, would accept tributary. Sure. Kind of useful. This radiance should heavily impact who the minor rulers of the area should want to pledge themselves to. They might even leave their current suzerain if that ruler is perceived as impious to join a more attractive Devaraja. We are going to be the hottest God King. Our goal is to be the most fuckable God King in this part of the maritime subcontinent. Damn it. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, but I'm a little sorry. I decree. Compared to aspects, decrees offer a more flexible way of ruling your realm. So what do you decree, O divine ruler? Laws. Okay. Realm size 2, not sharing power, prosperity, decrees. Choose your decree to primarily affect the current focus of your devotees, or subjects, however you want to call them. Your current focus, prosperity, expansion, or reverence right now. What do you aim to do next? So this is... I don't know how I feel about this UI for decrees, but I like the ability to tell my vassals what to do. Tributary status. A mandala's main subject will be the tributary, with faith being more relevant than cemented relations via vassalization. This system is intended to give a fairly loose realm setup, which is the really interesting part of this government type. Mandalas hold less land directly, as I suspected, instead relying mainly on their tributaries. While vassals still exist in a mandala realm, they are more limited here than in other governments. You can also integrate more tributaries as vassals as you expand your capital temple complex. A tributary is unable to engage in factions, has less opinions about what you get up to, and can engage in tribute missions to their Devaraja. On the other hand, they might also break away if you turn out to be less divine than you say, or if you treat them badly. Grossly overstepped domain limit, yes. All of this is reflected in lower domain as well as vassal limit, and more tributaries on game start. Yeah, really low vassal limit, lower domain limit. You have to keep your dudes happy. This part is interesting to me. The holding types and everything else, a little less so. The emphasis in the mandala realms is offering alternatives to simply going to war to claim new tributaries or expand your realm and divinity. Subjugation wars, for instance, will generate regular tributaries instead of piety-granting mandala tributaries, unless you go heavily into the destruction aspect. Ooh. One of these alternatives to war is the new coerce tributary, which is one of the cornerstones for mandala play. It is a political scheme that looks at your chosen mandala aspect and associated skill, then allows you to attempt coercing another ruler to become your tributary, that you're the divine ruler they've been waiting for. It is time, the moment for Klon Tungada to leave Sidak Chukoda's fold is nigh. The one thing left is for Tungada to inform Chakadoda of the lay of the land, then I shall have my tribute. Hopefully Sidak will be an honorable ruler and let him go amicably to the more suitable suzerain. I can hardly wait. The mandala ruler is anticipating the outcome of a successful coerced tributary scheme. Events are still a work in progress. Okay. Beware, though, if the tributary you're chatting up is already a tributary, then their current suzerain might incentivize them to stay, or you might even have to fight in order to defend that tributary as they break away and join your fold. Excellent. My tributary's envoy reaches my court, and the message is clear. That bastard has been twisting poor Thungada's mind, turning him against me, and now he yearns to leave my fold, withdrawing tribute and declining my suzerainty. Better lay down some incentive. We'll see about that, or this is fine. The suzerain of the targeted tributary gets the option to intervene in the course tributary scheme. Events are still work in progress. Or you don't help them, which severs their tributary status and burns your bridge with that particular tributary. Target of course tributary was incentivized to stick around, costing the suzerain a bunch of resources. Regardless, you may have gained a new tributary, but you definitely meddled with their suzerains, presumably a competing mandala ruler's plans. Maritime Southeast Asia. The islands are a virtual petri dish of faiths and cultures. We have very few sources of documentation from the time before larger faiths and realms significantly influenced the cultures and beliefs of the islanders. Screenshot of Maritime Sea. Yeah, I don't know enough about the period to comment. I know these shapes. I know these islands. In light of this, we have aimed to add the most prominent ones. Philippines, 1066. Sure do know those shapes. Including small bits of Papua, the lion's share of the maritime Southeast Asian archipelago is featured on the map. Formed more millennia early. Wanua. This is a heavily sea-based government form, which historically, as mentioned, came under the subject of larger realms and religions. They are still a tribal government type, however, and as such live under its constraints. If you want to progress further and become more advanced in terms of innovations and development, then you'll want to eventually adopt a different style of government. The Wanuas are in the islands of Southeast Asia. A couple of mandala upstart kingdoms are already available, some which later morphed into more powerful historical kingdoms like Serviana or Majapahit after our end date. However, if one desires to embark on the journey from Wanua to a powerful mandala god king, then that is entirely possible. As long as you have either adopted a dharmic faith or worked hard enough to reform your own faith, it is but a simple button press away, granting you access to islands that are ripe for picking. So does it have to be a... Can you not do this as a Confucian or Muslim ruler? Does it have to be a reformed native faith? Does it have to be a dharmic faith? It probably says right here. Is written in the stars, a shining, tempting beacon of divinity. We have a budding Devaraja in our midst who shall rule all planes of existence. Adopt mandala government. Must have absolute tribal authority. Faith must be organized to take this action. Your faith must be part of the pagan religious family or the Eastern religious family. Interesting. You're an independent ruler. You've changed government recently and need to wait. In addition to the cultural flavor, Wanua will be able to traverse the sea and raid naturally. Yes! We don't need Vikings. Let's go! We're looking into more ways of making the Wanua feel special and fun to play. For example, being more dependent on legitimacy, which they would receive from being mandala tributaries. Interesting. Another addition with All Under Heaven is the Great Projects feature. This allows several rulers to come together and fund various parts of projects that would be very expensive, or take ages to fund individually. The Mandala Great Project. For Mandala, the capital temple complex is such a project, a physical manifestation of your spiritual might, where your followers may come to pay tribute or simply worship you. The temple comes in 5 tiers, and once you have completed the first tier, you've officially started your path towards godhood. Should you manage to defend it, of course. Mandatory contributions. Each tier requires a specific set of contributions that you or any of your subjects may fund. Depending on who funds it, that specific ruler gains the spoils of such a benevolent act, as well as the appreciation of the founder. Okay. So I'm not sure what this 1 out of 4 means. I'm assuming it takes this much gold and this much piety. Or these are rewards, perhaps? And then the house, maybe the dynasty who controls it. Holding of Angkor gains the majestic temple great building. Gain piety, gain legitimacy, gain renown. Mandatory contributions. So gotta bring bricks. This house has contributed bricks. Stacks of tiles, shallow pools, workforce. There's numbers here. Do 18 people have to bring tiles? I'm not sure. Decorative tiles, decorated domes. I like that bricks, bricks are bricks and tiles are tiles. Shallow pools. Those are just buckets, my friend. Those are holes in buckets. I get what they're going for, though. Optional contributions for those who absolutely must have that golden dome that yields additional rewards for the contributor. Request contribution. If you are just starting off in your mandala journey, for your subjects for one reason or the other needs an additional nudge in order to actually contribute these archways to your project, there's also the request contribution button. Inside, you may be able to incentivize the request via hooks, bribes, forcing them with your oppressive, pious spirit, whatever might convince them to make the right call. Once you've completed the final tier, an achievement likely spanning generations, you'll have proven yourself an established Devaraja ruler and will receive huge bonuses to your mandala way of life. The bucketing budget is short. True. In China, the great projects are more focused on large-scale infrastructure and other improvements that require several contributors. Examples include building sections of the Great Wall or improving the Grand Canals. These projects allow the emperor to either contribute significantly on his own, displaying his might and benevolence as the Son of Heaven, or they present an opportunity for ambitious subjects vying for imperial graces. It's pretty art. That sure is a wall. A big one. Pretty great. Another opportunity for benevolent actions that improve your own standing is provided by the great projects that spawn from natural disasters. While natural disasters may spawn in geographically turbulent areas all over the map, only those in China will affect the dynastic cycle and potentially impact the emperor's standing, depending on how they are dealt with. More on natural disasters and their implications for the dynastic cycle will be covered in a future dev diary. Built this wall to keep the Mongols out. What do you mean they went around? It was a big wall. Needless to say, this feature opens up significant opportunities for modding and new additions, not only grand buildings, but great feats of humanity which can be showcased for generations to come. Tribute missions. Both mandala and hegemonic tributaries may go on tribute missions to their suzerain, primarily to strengthen their own legitimacy, but also to partake in the wealth and grandeur typically associated with the suzerain. Dynasty cringe meter increases every time there's a monsoon. Truly terrifying, right? Historically, the act of paying tribute was often both a matter for states and a very direct personal action. One ruler acknowledging another as their better and bringing them a gift to prove this. The fact that one party considers the other their suzerain does not mean that there cannot be reciprocity, however. In return for paying tribute, the tributary might gain benefits at home. They appear as a more rightful king due to being acknowledged by a more powerful suzerain, or even receive gifts to bring back home, essentially a form of trade. Hot Dog Derby would be a pretty opulent display in this era. It's true. It's a lot of beef. Beef? Hot dogs aren't usually made of beef. It's a lot of pork. I mean, they could be beef, but I don't know why I went to beef first. Since the passive payment of a resource over time does not quite cover the interpersonal aspects for a relationship like this, we've added what we call tribute missions, to be used for tributaries of the more voluntary type that you see in East Asia. To preserve these relationships, at least one such tribute needs to be undertaken per suzerain's lifetime. A lot of meat. Yeah, that's more correct. The paid tribute mission starts off with a decision which allows you to determine what tribute you want to bring. And types vary greatly depending on the suzerain. For example, if they utilize eunuchs, like the Chinese administrative government, you may gift a eunuch. If they have concubines, again, like China, you may gift a concubine. Standard tributes of gold or herd, if you're a nomad tributary, are always available. I want to show up at the Imperial Palace of China with just a bunch of goats, though. Bring only the expected tribute, offer additional gold, offer concubine, offer a eunuch. Once you've decided what kind of tribute you're offering, you set off on a journey towards your suzerain's capital. Upon arrival, you're greeted by the suzerain. If they have a royal court, you're received at the court, where you exchange gifts. First, the suzerain receives your gift, and you may attempt to influence what the reward will be, or you leave it up to the determination of the suzerain. Similar to the type of tribute being offered, the type of reward the suzerain may choose between vary depending on if you're mandala or the emperor. A handful of options might be to award them with additional trade posts, increasing the development of the tributary's capital, award them with an artifact to bring back and display to their people, award them with a monk to mend their heathen ways, or mandalas to give to their tribal tributaries who are still unreformed. Ooh, that's fun. You start traveling back home once you've received your reward, eager to showcase the gift and enjoy the legitimacy you received from your tribute. Now I will hand the word over to Lashek, who implemented the hegemonic celestial tributary types. Fun fact, tributing rare animals was not exclusive to Southeast Asia or this era. It's true. King D'Emmanuel once tributed the Pope a rhino in the 1500s. Neat. Well, I know there's I know this is certainly a thing in the Roman period. Oh, I'm coming up on ads. All right. Implemented hegemonic untie my tongue. Hegemonic tribute missions. Hello again, Lashek here, and I'm excited to once more discuss tributaries with you. As mentioned above, tributaries were first introduced into Crusader Kings 3 to support nomadic gameplay with Khans of the Steppe, where they modeled the unique subject-overlord relationship between a tributary and their suzerain. On the vast expanse of northern Asia, nomadic tributary relationships were mostly held together through military domination, either implied or by actual display of force. Nomadic rulers can demand their neighboring realms fall under line under them by building up a sizable horde, or simply go out and enforce it through warfare. Through a cascade of such relationships, enormous swaths of the plains can be held together under a single suzerain. Indeed. However, they can collapse just as quickly due to migratory patterns or a foreign conqueror cutting off a key part of the chain. We also implemented a subjugated tributary type available outside the steppe to represent rulers dominated by more powerful neighbors and made to pay tax to their overlord, as I mentioned earlier. However, none of these types adequately represent how tributary relationships functioned either in Southeast Asia or China. Therefore, we are introducing both mandala tributaries and the hegemonic/celestial types. More on the distinction later. Wherein the relationship is more contingent on one-sided respect and a gift economy. Celestial realms. These are realms within China's sphere of influence that recognize the emperor as the son of heaven and pay him a great deal of personal respect, not to speak of material wealth. In return, they are granted recognition and sovereignty by China. Unlike tributaries on the steppe, this is not primarily a military arrangement, but rather a one-sided show of deference, ultimately serving both parties in the end. This relationship can be established by either party through character interaction, but is typically initiated by the prospective tributary themselves. Once established, the tributary has few immediate obligations, a little bit of prestige, and perhaps some gold, in exchange for which some of China's legitimacy is conferred upon them. It's usually a beneficial arrangement for both parties, especially since any taxes paid by the tributary goes directly into the emperor's personal coffers, rather than the treasury. Ooh. This makes it one of the few sources of direct income the emperor has available for his own discretionary projects. Yeah, that's interesting. So the emperor's really funding... The emperor's personal wealth is really funded through bribes and corruption. Neat. And everything else has to go into the empire. Over time, the emperor may decide to impose further standing obligations on some of their tributaries. Any increase in taxation or prestige transfer also comes with closer ties to China. However, thereby increasing legitimacy for the subject. However, celestial tributaries are also expected to kowtow to the Son of Heaven on a regular basis, bringing immense riches and gifts with them to reaffirm their deference and respect. This is fundamentally the same kind of tribute mission as in Mandala realms, with a few modifications. Unlike in Mandala realms, the Chinese emperor always has some minimum expectation regarding the size of tribute, depending on the esteem in which the tributary is already held. This is tracked by a metric we call imperial grace. Goodness, there's so many mechanics, which serve several purposes. It acts as a timer on how frequently you are expected to pay tribute. If you're only able to bring the bare necessities and wait until the last moment to reaffirm your respect, the emperor might start to demand more frequent visits. Highly successful missions give you a longer grace period until your presence is once again expected. It gives you an opportunity to adjust your relationship depending on what kind of tributary you want to be. You pay only nominal respect when absolutely required, just so China will overlook you when assessing their borders? Or are you a devoted subject looking for a closer relationship? The decay rate of imperial grace increases during unstable periods of the dynastic cycle, reflecting the uncertainty of these times. Will you continue to sustain the ruling dynasty of China's legitimacy during troubled times, or seize on this moment to break the agreement and try to claim a piece of pie for yourself? As a celestial tributary, you can quite readily adjust your own tributary contract's obligations, but changing it in your favor costs an amount of imperial grace. Neat. This actually sounds like an incredibly cool mechanic. This is, I was going to say head and shoulders. This is far and above. Already sounds like a much better system than we had in Crusader Kings 2. Much more interesting, much more dynamic. It's more than just a button you can press. It's going to be used alongside the travel mechanic, I assume. This is interesting. This in particular, you know, frequency of visits and so on and so forth. Finally, at very high levels of imperial grace, the emperor might decide to make China's relationship with the subject more permanent through granting the seal of investiture. This is an enduring artifact of a regalia type, which can be reforged into a court artifact if you wish, that gives access to special privileges that are not usually available to subjects of China, such as trade access. Grants the tributary access to the domestic markets of the Chinese capital, resulting in a gradual closing of the development gap between the two realms' capital provinces. Ooh. A low development tributary enjoying this privilege could potentially propel itself to wealth and power compared to their less privileged neighbors within a few generations. Family access negates the usual high acceptance malices for marrying into the Chinese imperial dynasty, and even grants a small bonus to such dynastic intermingling. Palace access lets the tributary's representatives roam the palace grounds, rubbing shoulders with ministers, governors, and sages in the seat of power. Tributaries with this privilege become active participants in the dynastic cycle and can join political movements to shape the future of China. Are you telling me I can have, for example, feudal gameplay alongside celestial unlanded gameplay? Like getting access to the mechanics I would have as a unlanded character in China while being a landed character on the periphery? Because that's sick. And that sounds really fun. I think out of the three major regions that are being added with their own unique mechanics to this game, I think China sounds the most interesting. Korea, unfortunately, sounds like China, like Diet China. Japan sounds complicated and excessively complicated. And the mandala, I'm really on the fence about. I don't know if it sounds fun. It sounds complicated and weird and different, and I don't know. China sounds really fun. Once you have gained a seal of investiture, these become available as new contract privileges that you can activate in exchange for a one-time cost of Imperial Grace. One-time cost of $9.99. This doesn't make the tribute missions redundant, however. The size of the bonuses you get from these scales with the degree of Imperial Grace you currently possess. So sustained tribute will only make your relationship with China more powerful. It is important to note that a celestial tributary contract is a formal agreement between a realm and the emperor. This contract is inherited upon death of either the tributary or the suzerain, but the hegemony title is lost and the contract will break, even if another claimant dynasty later restores it. As long as the dynastic line is unbroken, however, accumulated imperial grace and the privileges that contract yields can be maintained for centuries. So this is interesting. If, for example, you build up imperial grace with the whatever dynasty of China, whatever dynasty is in power, the Song, and they get conquered and usurped, you're starting over from zero with the new guys, is what I'm reading. And there's a risk benefit. There's a bit of risk benefit play there with how closely you want to tie yourself to China. You may have noticed I've made a distinction between hegemonic and celestial tributaries above. I actually didn't, but I'll have to go back and see what you said for each. A celestial tributary is a type of hegemonic tributary specific to China. However, other hegemony titles, for example, India or restored Rome, I'd love to know what the fourth is, because they make it sound like there's more than 3, can also maintain hegemonic tributaries that share many similarities with the celestial ones. Instead of imperial grace, these contracts have subject standing. They do not use the seal of investiture mechanic with its tie-in to China-specific mechanics, like difficult dynastic intermarriages, the dynastic cycle situation, but most of the other aspects of the contract work in similar ways with the same dynamics. This allows hegemony tier titles to use the tributary mechanic not only to expand their own de facto tracts of land, but also to accept recognition and deference from select surrounding realms they find useful in their larger strategy. Neat. Cool. Again, what's the fourth one? They've mentioned 3 hegemonies. And they keep mentioning 3 hegemonies, but they mention them as if there are more that are formable. I need names, motherfucker. I'll conclude this with the final note to modders. The hegemonic celestial variance of tributary types now marks 5 distinct types I've implemented in Crusader Kings 3. With Mandala being a 6th in All Under Heaven's release. I'm continually amazed at how flexible this system truly is in allowing you to model different types of relationships between realms that look nothing like a feudal liege-vassal system. Anything from simple non-aggression between 2 specific rulers to long-standing extractive domination is possible. Colonialism? With the one caveat that it always must have an implied power imbalance. With the addition of subject standing, which tracks relationship strength over time and can theoretically be applied to any subject contract, including your typical vassal contracts if so desired, there's a lot of fertile ground to represent entirely novel types in your own mods, be they focused on more granular historical accuracy or total conversions. And now we're handing the microphone back to Trangela, who will have another look at the map. Map for sickos. I'm sorry, my eyes went straight to moist. I think it's moist, but moist. As we did last time, we will conclude a short overview of the map area relevant to this diary. Southeast Asia looks rather different in 867, 1066, and 1178. So for this, I will be using a mix. If you're curious about anything in particular that I've not shown, feel free to ask in the comments. Like everything else in this dev diary, this is a work in progress, but we'd love to hear your feedback on the things we've covered so far. Faiths, 867. All right, so we have Aryan Theravada here. Thep Iraq, which I'm assuming is a pagan belief. Moist, Mahayana. Very interested in these local faiths in China, actually. Very interested in these local faiths in the Philippines. Tolotong, Alok, Tolotong, Shivaite, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Neat. Can't read this one here. Vishivanite? Moist? You've heard of the cum. Now get ready for moist. We have to be moist pagans, right? That has to be a campaign? We have to be moist pagans. As was mentioned in the introduction, Southeast Asia has quite a complex mix of faiths and religions. We have tried to represent a reasonable amount of this variety while also generalizing to avoid having overly small microfaiths at the start. This is an unfortunate reality of Tibet and South Asia in the current game. There are some overly small microfaiths in Tibet and South Asia. There just are. What's it called? That one province that would become incredibly famous like 500 years after the game's period, has a faith that only exists in that one province. It's gonna bother me. Oh no, it's right here. Yeah, this faith right here only exists in this province, and it has a sister faith that like only exists up here. And then this faith only exists here, and there's another faith that only exists here, and another one that only exists here, and another one that only exists here. They're super interesting historically. It's super cool for the people who live in those regions and have that as part of their history, that their faiths are represented. But it is a bit of a problem in this region. Anyway, just so I recognize that that's an issue. Already in 867, Hinduism and Buddhism in various forms are dominant in large parts of this map, but older indigenous faiths are also present, both on the mainland and on the islands. Cultures: Papuan. Oh, cool. Philippines gets 3 culture groups, which is not enough, but it's a little more than I expected, I'll be honest. Okay. It'd be nice to see a little bit more cultures in this area, just from what little I know about this area, but Malay, Dayak, Achanese, Javanese, Visayan, Tagalog, Mir, Cham, Chimu, Mon, Aaron, Tai Bai, Viet. Cool. When it comes to cultures, the region is even more diverse in many ways. Notably, the Thai peoples are still found mostly in its northern parts. Oh, Thai. Right. Historically, offshoots from this group would become to be politically dominant in many parts of the mainland, from modern Laos to Thailand, to Assam in northern India, the area labeled Kampuri on this map. Striking a balance between having too many or too few cultures from a gameplay point of view is never easy. But in this part of the world, it is perhaps particularly hard. What we show here is both more simplified and more balkanized than we usually aim for. Alright. They acknowledge it. That's all I need. I'm a dumbass white American. My opinion doesn't matter. If people in this part of the world have a problem, they'll make it known to Paradox. I'm not gonna complain about it because they're right. See, this looks like the political map, which we sort of looked at already. Political situation in 1066, with the Song Empire looming over the region in the north. The Shirijava Empire, which was alive and well at the initial screenshot at the beginning of this diary, has been shattered by a relatively recent Chola invasion from India. Cool. Quick overview of the Duchy map mode. Many of these are not yet created on game start, as small realms prevail in Southeast Asia. Where other regions have a number of powerful dukes under their kings, this region often sees duchies divided up between individual tributaries instead. Okay. I don't know enough about the history to comment on the division, but it seems like good density to me from a gameplay perspective, which is great. There's your kingdoms. They're where I expect them to be. Yep. Philippines has 2, which is excellent. That's dramatic line read. Excellent. Let me take a sip of coffee before I do it. Moist pagans in your area. Click here. Pagan is quite large. I mean, it's certainly larger than it is without the map expansion. Last but not least, these are de jure empires for the region. Nusantara may look big, but in terms of counties, it's not actually as enormous as it might seem. Not all parts of these islands are places with established states, i.e. counties, and the inland can often be impassable in places like Borneo or Papua. Borneo. Yeah, it does seem like a huge empire, but fair enough. Interesting making this all one empire, but not this. I'm not sure. I forgot what this was. They showed it in China, though. And then they renamed Bengal. They renamed Bengal and took Pagan out of it. So, probably makes sense. Sometimes de jure empires don't really have much historical basis, though, so I'm not gonna stress too hard about it. That was all we had this time. This diary is also the last one before our summer break. Oh, but our dev diaries will resume in early August. Until then, we will, of course, still be attentive to the feedback you've provided to our diaries so far, including this one. So, y'all, I don't usually say this, but I should. If you have any comments or suggestions for the dev team, this is the right one. This is the place to do it on the forums. Make your voice heard. There's also a poll going on for next year's content that you can find, I believe, on the forums, and I really recommend taking a look at it because it not only gives you a chance to get your voice heard, but it kind of gives a sneak peek on what they're considering after this DLC, and it's kind of exciting. As far as all of this goes, I think I've said everything. I'm worried about the mandala government. I'm worried about the new holding type being geographically isolated, and I'm worried about the focus on difficulty for the government type. It just doesn't sit right with me. And in some ways I can't put my finger on that, but in other ways I already have. China sounds exciting. I love that the non-mandala governments can raid. That's super cool. Anyway, if you got this far and you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff I'm supposed to say. I'm gonna chat with Twitch for a little bit, and we're gonna talk some shit about y'all. Bye!